Agreed.
Good. Which takes us on to item 15, which is performance finance risk report. I think Councillor Ellis, you are proposing. Councillor Leppard, you are seconding. Councillor Ellis, do you want to begin?
Thank you, Chair. So we've been bringing these reports to Cabinet for a year now, and I think it's been a really great initiative that's enabled us to scrutinise the performance of this council in a way we hadn't been able to do previously, and in practice identify problems quicker and make quicker interventions on them when they've been needed. And I just wanted to say I'm really grateful to Becca and the other officers for all of the work that's gone into producing this document and adapting it and improving it as we've gone along, and providing all of the information that has allowed us to keep an eye on our performance areas so well. In light, this has been touched on some of the previous reports we've looked at, but in light of the new Building Harlow Futures strategy, we will be taking this opportunity to review how we present this information and what information we present going forwards to make sure it aligns with our new priorities and everything that residents want and expect from us. So this should be the last time that we see this report in its current form. But to now just touch on the details of this last report on the performance section before I hand over to James. So again, we've seen good performance on the majority of indicators this month or last month. For example, we've seen improvements in a few areas, including in my own area on customer complaints. Although there's been an increase in the volume, we've been able to come to them in good time, and that has improved for a sort of a blip that we had a few months ago. So I'm pleased to have seen that, and it's customer complaints is something I'm particularly keen to work on going forward without new project and plans. So I hope to see even more work being done to improve the systems that residents go through when they want to speak to our council and get things done in future. I'm very happy to take questions on any of the other elements, but I think all in all it's been a good set of performance indicators.
Councillor Leppard, anything to add on the finance side?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, this is a high-level report for the period only up until April, so we're really still at the start of the financial year. A full report will be given at next Cabinet, where the finance team, who are currently working diligently on closing the financial year report for 24-25, that will be reported to Cabinet once it's finalised. This paper shows, though, I think what the key thing to look at is how the MTFP is now inextricably linked to the 6 missions. And this report does highlight that regarding the general fund, the housing revenue account and the capital programmes. We can see that notwithstanding the adverse impact of lower than expected government settlement and the increased national insurance employer contributions, our MTFP remains fully funded throughout its life until 27-28. This is the first time, I think, when we've really had the finances inextricably linked to the missions, because at the end of the day, finance is the engine oil that allows us to achieve those missions, along with a lot of other inputs, but it is very fundamental. And if you look at page 83, you will see that we are going to reiterate all the way through this on an ongoing basis how the MTFP is now a living document. In the past, it was presented in February and became a doorstop for 3 years. Now, this is a reference document that we need to look at to ensure that we are achieving our missions. The same applies to the, we've got a new way of presenting all the information, and it's setting it out very clearly for the general fund and the same for the housing revenue account, which shows, it's got the, we've got some of the most ambitious budgets ever set by this council, including an extensive, almost 23 million new homes building programme, which is in the housing capital programme. So I think this, the only thing that really stands out, which I asked for approval for today, is the recommended veerment for the completion of the Innovation Park cafe, more of which are in another item on tonight's agenda. But I do recommend this, and the way that we are presenting the information on pages 91, we're now having a much more graphic format, which actually is consistent with Councillor Edwards' request for transparency. This could not be more patent and open than that, and we will work to extend that to the financial elements of this, hopefully in the next couple of months, when the team have finished their. They're under a lot of pressure at the moment, but it is a matter that we will address. Thank you.
Very good. Questions? Councillor Pearce?
I may well correct me if I'm wrong. Are we going to be underspent from what I worked out across the document? My question then would be, if we are going to be underspent, is the council proposing to reallocate and reinvest it?
Where do you assume we're going to be underspent? Sorry.
Just looking across the documents, and it just looks to me as though we will be underspent. I may well be wrong, my calculations. If that is so, that's why I said correct me.
We having a surplus does not necessarily mean we're underspent. Okay, it does. That will always, it's highly unlikely that if we have a surplus. Yes, we may end up with a smaller surplus because there will always be claims for something else. Something always happens. We're asking for a veerment now. Now, assuming that those items that we're not going to spend the money on, maybe that changes and we do have to spend it. So I can't really give you a cast iron forecast over 3 years where we're going to be overspent. We're trying. The objective always is to be balanced. Really, we should have reserves, but as we've said before, reserves are there for a purpose. Either we invest them, or we're taxing people too much, or not spending enough on services which are required.
Sorry about my terminology of saying underspent rather than surplus. So a couple more questions. So what you've actually said, you've answered some of my questions. My next one would be, how would the council address any areas of slippage in the capital programme? And that's what you're...
I mean, one of the things which we're talking about in this paper is seeking authority for the Section 151 officer and the leader and portfolio holder to address carryovers. Now, they're not necessarily slippages, but the budgets can. It's not, when we say we set a budget, it's not cast in stone in that sense. There's always room, and there's constant readjustments across the different portfolios, which is based not only on demands on them, but also timings as well. When are the funds needed? When do we need to deliver them? When do we need to spend them? So I think to try and answer your question, that is like a perennial problem that we're always dealing with. Yeah, I mean, we live in a dynamic environment, so things happen. For example, this year we've had to use some of our reserves, which we've got reserves. That's what reserves are for, because to make up for some of the lack of funding we didn't receive from the settlement. And so those sorts of things can happen. But fortunately, we have adequate reserves, strong reserves, and we know how to deploy them effectively. Thank you.
To come back, I think what you're actually saying is the fact that we get this every cabinet meeting actually is making sure that we're addressing the finances properly across the council.
I think it's very important, and it's something that I was pressing for several years, and luckily now we have it. And it also is completely aligned with all the other missions. I mean, this is not just for finance. This type of performance measurement is going right across all the portfolios, and everyone's engaged in it. And now all the portfolio holders are also engaged in preparing the budget as well, which is a vast improvement. It does create more involvement and more responsibility and accountability. But yes, we need to see how we're performing every month, and that's what we're doing now. We will improve the presentations, but this is the start.
Good.
So people will be able to see what's going on, and it will also enable us to identify potential risks coming up.
Councillor Leppard, I agree and endorse with everything you're saying and can see how passionate you are. I wonder if I can make a short plea for perhaps slightly more succinct answers in the interest of the end of the evening that we have ahead. Any further questions on this? Councillor Edwards?
Page 81, paragraph 9, says that at the end of April, only 2 performance indicators are RAG rated red and 1 RAG rated as orange. Could I have a comment on those, please? And what's work being done to ameliorate that?
Yeah, so the two, so April, there's just the 2 rated red in the table. I'm not sure about the orange one, I'll double check that, but yeah, so this is on page 90 to 91 if you've got that one. So we have been including, and something we've worked on throughout this sort of reporting process, is making sure to include as much information as we can in the comments section. So there's a bit of a description in there just explaining this is on void turnaround times and on the number of empty, yeah, it's basically on turnaround times. There's the number of empty homes and then the reletting of them. And there's a bit of information in there just explaining about the condition of the properties that have come back, the allocation system, and sort of higher than expected. This has obviously been a sort of a fluctuating issue. There's been periods where it's been better, there's been periods where it's got worse, and we've continued to keep an eye on it. I don't know if Councillor Carter wants to say any more specifically on the housing issues, but we'll continue to keep an eye on it and continue to do what we can to keep it low. And yeah, there is some explanation in there as to the reasons we've seen for that. But I know it's been up and down.
I'd draw your attention to paragraph 10, which sets out exactly the answer to the question that you asked. Yep.
Paragraph 10 and paragraph 11 address 2 of the issues, but they don't address the 3rd issue. And in terms of the paragraph, page 90, the print on there is so small that it's almost impossible to read. I mean, and yeah, they do, and even those, it's still difficult to do. So, as far as Councillor Leppard is concerned, page. It's not labelled, I'm afraid. The back page of the report still states as high. SR11, SR13 is high, and SR14 is high. SR14 is very high.
I'm happy to take the question, it's probably easier. So, strategic risk, as the report sets out, in light of the new plan, we are taking a comprehensive look at our strategic risk across the board. So I'd expect over the coming months, Cabinet to see something slightly different coming forward. I think what, as ever with a risk register, what you ought to focus more on is the mitigating factors. A risk is often something that potentially is outside of the council's control. The interest is what the council is doing to mitigate that risk accordingly, which again, the question sort of looks more at the controls and additional actions. But on our strategic risk register accordingly, again, I think we've done a great deal of work on our financial performance, how we report that, and our actual sort of key performance, and risk is something that now we are certainly turning greater attention to move to that point. If your question is, are we significantly concerned about any of those risks above and beyond the controls that we've set out, I don't think the answer is. If you look at financial resilience, I think it's well documented why that is a risk. It's not anything in the council's control. If you were to look at local authority function, I think we've heard a bit about why that's at risk this evening. Resource capacity has come down from previous months, as has corporate governance. So I think the purpose of this is being fulfilled. Of course, when you run an organisation like this, there is always risks. There are many that are high risk, but as I say, the interest in is what we are doing to mitigate those risks and those not play out. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think the classification of the risk, high, medium, low, is not so much about the likelihood of it happening, but the consequences of it happening far more. So if we have a financial problem, a financial resilience, that would have a big impact, an adverse impact, rather than some of the other ones. But that doesn't mean to say we are exposed to a high risk at the moment. It's really about the consequences of it.
Any further questions on this report? Yeah. Okay, any comments? Yeah, a couple. Councillor Pearce.
So firstly, can I say it's lovely to have it the way in the format it's coming to us now, and there's an awful lot of work from Jackie and the team, so thank you. Apart from my use of underspend to surplus, it's nice to know that there's a surplus, and it may well change, and obviously whether or not it's reinvested, we'll see later down the road, but in the format that it comes, and obviously it's still going to change, it's still better to have it the way that we've got than we had before. So thank you.
Councillor Gunn.
Thank you. Just that I note within the report that rent collection is at the highest rate since March 2019, which I think is worth drawing attention to. And I hope on behalf of us all say congratulations to Councillor Carter and the exceptional housing team that have delivered that figure.
Anything further to add? No, I think what's very easy to gloss over with this report is where you report by exception is all the exceptional performance that you therefore don't report. And actually, if you look across the board, performance on the things that make the difference to our residents day in, day out, you will find few councils that have a better bin collection rate than us. You will find few councils that have many other stats that are set out and performance that we measure that is better. And a lot of those things have improved as a result of having this report in place and the action Cabinet as they're directed to improve those things. If you went back a year ago and you looked at these reports, you would see that bin collections rate was not as good. Invoice processing was not as good, and a number of other things to that regard. So it's certainly having its intended effect, I would say, and as ever would commend the whole organisation and everyone that works in it for delivering that performance, because that is what we're here to do. As Councillor Ellis said, obviously this will be now refocused towards our new plan and the way ahead. But with that, are Cabinet happy to agree the recommendations as they're set out?
Agreed.